years, there have been some extraordinary advances in the communication between humans and animals, especially those with dolphins and with owls. But at the forefront of this field is Professor Timothy Fielding.
Good evening.
And his experiments with a bear called Boris. Now, Professor, can Boris really speak as we would understand it?
Oh yes. He can speak a few actual words. Of course, it's been extremely difficult to get him even to this point. When I first caught Boris on the Kamchatka Peninsula must have been 67?
68.
68. There was an awful lot of work to do. It was extremely slow and difficult. I had to do a lot of work with Boris on a sort of one-to-one basis.
If I could just butt in for a second there. Actually, I have done an awful lot of work on this project myself, because frankly, Professor, your teaching methods leave something to be desired. And your diction is unlike that of any I have ever heard.
I'm sorry. Can I just put things into perspective here? When I first caught Boris in 67, he was completely wild.
Wild? I was absolutely livid.
Well, clearly that's all changed now, because of course you've been brought up in the professor's house.
Yes, that's right. He's living with me, yes.
Though not in the biblical sense of
Yes, I was going to ask you actually. Boris, do you currently have a mate?
Oh yeah, I've got tons of mates. There's the professor, of course, and his son Toby. There's Trevor next door. Well,
no, I was.
Oh, I see what you mean. You mean a crumpet? Do I have a crumpet?
You didn't tell me you were friendly with Trevor.
Well, do I have to tell you everything?
To come back to my earlier question, how, Professor, has Boris reacted to being separated from his family?
Well, to begin with, he did make some attempts to contact his old pack of bears.
Professor, please, it's a sleuth. A sleuth of bears. It's a pack of stoats.
He sent them the odd letter, but to be honest, I couldn't really see the point. I mean, they either ate them or wiped their bottoms on them.
No, you never got on with my mother, did you?
Well, she didn't exactly like me, did she?
She had no problem with David Attenborough.
David Attenborough. All I ever hear is David bloody Attenborough.
Look, can we just leave Dave out of this?
Oh, please? Shut up and eat some berries or something.
If I could just interrupt for 1 minute. Boris, I understand you've been earning some money doing TV commercials and so on.
Yes, that's right, yes.
What exactly do you spend your money on?
Well, I expect you're hoping that I say I spend it on salmon and marmalade and carpet cleaner.
No, not at all.
No. Well, I do spend about 95% of my money on those items, yes. But the rest I save for little treats, little trinkets. I indulge myself occasionally. I do especially like the work of Michael Bublé.
You're not kidding, are you? White Christmas blaring out at all hours while I'm downstairs trying to do some work.
Look, the production values on that album are sublime.
This is my serious scientific project, and you behave like an absolute child.
Your project? Look, I went to evening classes for 3 years.
Shut up about your bloody evening classes, Boris.
As Aristotle once said, Lorem ipsum delor sit amen in
You arrogant little bastard, you're wrecking my life's work. Trampling around the garden, eating the begonias.
I do not eat begonias.
Well, somebody does, don't they?
Look, well, perhaps we could leave it there. Professor, Boris, thank you both very much indeed. Now, before we go to a commercial break, Boris, I believe you're actually partway through a lecture series of parochial Midlands villages.
Yes, that's correct, yes.
Could you perhaps give us a flavour?
Of course. Do you want to clear the chairs, guys, and we'll get started? For those of them who don't know you, could you just kind of introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Ben. There's 1 or 2 faces out there I have recognised. Those who don't know me, I was the village policeman from 1981 to 1990. Yeah, that sounds like somebody who remembers me well.
So we thought it'd be nice to kind of pull some stories out of you for that time, and you were tweeting some earlier today.
Yeah.
So I've written them on the board to remind myself. So maybe just before we start that, like, give us a flavour of what it was like to be bombing on the beat in that time. What was it like?
Yeah, it was a wonderful place. It still is, even though I don't live here. I came here in, as I said, 1981, and it was just after we'd had a lot of rioting in the UK. And police forces, as they do, were reinventing themselves and decided they were going to put policemen back in villages and communities. And so the police house, which had been empty for about 6 years till I moved into it, was reopened as a police station. And the first few days were quite an experience for me. It was the sort of policing I'd always wanted to do. It was the days before Heartbeat on the telly. But I have to say, if anybody did watch Heartbeat, that is a pretty accurate reflection of what police life was like. And the first few days in the village were quite an eye-opener. I was bombarded with stories of the civil unrest that was going on throughout the village. By gangs of marauding young people, which are probably still going on to this day, and various other things. And I think in the first week, by the end of the first week, I'd had a found dog, 2 found rabbits, a guinea pig, and a pony.
A success.
On the front lawn. The CB radio phase was an amazing period, wasn't it? They started this wonderful radio system that allowed you to talk to people 300 yards away. We'd all got telephones, and I didn't quite understand why we did it, but it was marvellous. And we knew it was going on, and yes, in the strictest sense of the word, it was illegal. And I thought, well, if you can't beat him, you might as well join him. So I had a set in my car, and I had a set in the house, and you had to come up with this wonderful handle. And mine, yes, was of course County Mountain. But in all seriousness, it did bring a massive proportion of the village together. And Jean will remember, and many other people will remember, some brilliant nights we used to have at the cricket club. Lots of fun, not Beffy, but some real good times, yeah.
What was it like then? How did you all just, how did you stop you all from talking at the same time? How did it work, the CB radio?
It's all very clever. 1.9 for a copy. Yeah, there was some wonderful characters on it, up and down the country. And I must have got really mad with it on one stage, because I remember finishing work at 2 o'clock one morning and decided I was going to go and see if I could get the sort of the longest distance I'd ever managed. And I drove to a place in Ruisley, some of you may know it, called Style Cop, which is right up on Cannock Chase. And it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going 1.9 for a coffee. And I spoke to somebody down the other side of Northampton, just for 20 seconds. And it was like, yes! It was so exciting. And then my bubble burst when 2 colleagues from Ruisley pulled up behind me to check me out. Wondering why I'm sat on Cannock Chase at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Again, those who remember me will remember for about the first 2 or 3 years, my mode of transport was a motorbike, again just like Heartbeat. It was a make of motorcycle called a CZ, which was a very basic East European motorcycle that the police had spent an absolute fortune on. And that was that was my introduction to motorcycling. It has a lot to answer for. I went on a motorbike course in February 1981. What a brilliant time to learn to ride a motorbike. February. The first 3 days we were riding around and getting used to ride a motorbike, because I'd never been on one in my life. And we were doing lots of theory as you do in police driving. And so on the Thursday afternoon, lunchtime, the instructor said, right, we're all ready to go now, you're all at a standard now, we're going to go out on the road. And so at about 2 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, we left police headquarters at Stafford, and we turned left towards Cannock. And as we did so, it started to snow. I have never ridden a motorbike on a road before. I'm now riding on a road in falling snow. It was a very, very steep introduction to the art of motorcycling. One of the stories, though, that came out during the course was that the East European motorcycles, and those motorcyclists who may be out there will, again, I'm sure remember makes such as Jawa and CZ, which were pretty much the same. The CZ was actually a posh version of a Jawa. And they were very, very basically engineered, but they were brilliant in a way. They were cheap, they were cheerful, but they just went on. But again, without getting into the technicalities of how an engine works, I'm sure most of you know that you have some spark, you have some fuel, you have the pistons that go up and down. And it's all engineered in a way that the pistons go in a certain direction, that turns the bit that makes the wheels go. That's the principle behind it. Well, there was this folklore story that CZs occasionally would start up and the engine would run backwards. So that when you put the bike into gear, it would move backwards. Of course, nobody believed this story. I'd been here about 2 years, and I'd parked the motorbike outside the shops, outside the co-op, and I'd done whatever I was doing, and I came back to the motorbike, and I started it up, and as I started it up, it sounded different. And I thought, that sounds unusual. And this story came flooding back to me that, is this engine running backwards? It can't be. So I very carefully put it into gear. And as I did, and let the clutch out, the motorcycle started moving backwards. I thought I was imagining it, so I put it into neutral, did it again, and sure enough, I was moving backwards. And I'll never forget the look of astonishment. The lady was standing at the bus stop opposite me, watching me reversing this motorcycle. And she shouted across and said, "Ben, these motorcycles nowadays are so marvellous, my husband's never had reversing."
B is for beer. Beer. Ah yes, beer. That bonny, bitter, brown beverage. Brewed of barley and other bits, and boiled and bashed, and then barrelled and bottled and bestowed away to all of Britain. To bars and ballrooms and to backstreet bazaars, where it's imbibed bodily by beats and bourgeoisie and beau monde. But beware, blessed brothers, for beer is bad. Yes, beer bloats the bowel, and the brain becomes bawdy and barbarous, brutal, belligerent. Yes, it brings on barfing and belching and burping and bawling. Behavioural barriers are blinded, bladder control banished. In Burton, behold the balding, big-bellied, bloated blokes bellowing bigotries at big-bottomed, braless broads. No, beautiful! Get your boobs out for the boys! Hey! Big bum, big bum! I say boo to bingers. Boo to bingers. I say be gone with you, you boozers, because beer is bad. Beer is bad. But then, to bathe Rebuka in boreal, bitter British beer is bliss. To bless Bacchus himself and to banter with buddies at birthdays with big, bubbly bottles of breathtaking beatitude. Oh, and the billions of brilliant brands that beer boasts. Yes, Budvar and Brahma and Brooklyn and Beck's and Bass and Budweiser, Boddington's, Bombardier and Blue Moon. Oh, bewitching brews, both blithe and benevolent. Yes. By any chance was I beguiled when I blurted that beer was bad? Was my barrage not based on bogus and biased beliefs? Yes. Blast. I begin again. Ah, beer. That bonny bitter brown beverage. I bid thee, everybody, bravely take a bow with me for beer. Thank you. Tomorrow I will be discussing the pros and cons of xylophone.